what is meant by the free and open sourceness of this entire AI paradigm. I think when we were having this battle between the proprietary and the FOSS paradigm, we had it in a very vibrant phase 2 decades back. The proprietary systems, which are completely closed, and what it really took to open them up or to ensure the freedom of users and computing science to be alive. The paradigm then required that as we all know, that the software exists in the forms of binary and source code. So if the source code was available and made it public, there was a chance for us to basically look at, study it, and verify if the code is being, the outcome of the code and the binary are one and the same or not. So it protected the openness and also protected the freedom in computing. Both of them were alive. But when you look at the paradigm of AI essentially, when we look at it, does the source code being open be a sufficient condition for us to call it something as continuation of the FOSS paradigm? The answer very clearly is no. It is necessary, but definitely not sufficient. So how could one call the entire the AI to be in the true spirit of FOSS? If we were to look at it, then we'll have to look at the components of AI. When we look at the components of what constitute AI, first is the transparency in the algorithm. Algorithm should be made available for the people. The second thing is the code for implementation of it. The third is the model and its weights. And the most important component of it are the data sets on which the entire model is trained. Just in case if the algorithm is not open and nobody knows, there is no transparency at all. But even in the case the source code being made open is not sufficient here, because if the data set in itself is a complete biased data set, the model would be giving a completely different results. And the programmatic efficiency does not really matter on what purpose the AI model serves. So we need to have the data sets also to be open, and also the weights of the model. It means what decision that the model accrue for what kind of a scenario is the weights that are basically there in the model. And these weights also need to be made available in the public domain. I think these are the 4 components that need to be made available for scrutiny in the paradigm of AI. As Anwar has correctly pointed out when he was making the introductory remarks, that what is open in OpenAI is the only name. Nothing else in OpenAI is open at all, because we don't know what is the data set on which it has been trained. Nobody knows about the algorithms that have been used and what are the biases that are existing in OpenAI or not. There have been certain cases where certain references to some critiques of the certain governments are being just filtered out in OpenAI as well. So, but when you look at this entire paradigm of AI, what has DeepSeek done? DeepSeek undisputedly has gone far away from the closeness, and it has opened up a lot of things, which is making the open source or the FOSS evolution in the AI possible. And I think we should appreciate what DeepSeek has done. First thing is that it has released its model and its weights. It has released it under the MIT license, which is a copyleft license. And again, it has released the complete weights of the model, which basically allows us to study the algorithm and implement it on a completely different data sets that are available. However, the data sets on which it has trained are not being made public, but despite which we still have an option of how things can be improved and how things can be built in the Indian context or in the global south context per se. But what is important here is that what DeepSeek did was it busted the myth that AI can never be created. It requires $6 billion to create something like OpenAI. That myth, they have busted it very efficiently and effectively. There have been FSMI, organizations like Svecha, researchers across the world with open source inclination have been speaking about, saying that the way in which the open AI was built was completely a brute force method, and that is not the smartest way of doing things. And now, what DeepSeek has done is that it has proved that you don't really need so much of computational capacity. And this myth, or you could say, the global north institutions were now trying to basically build a new kind of a vendor lock-in, making the world believe that nobody else can build an equivalent of that, because we all have seen what Sam Altman has said when he was in India. Sam Altman came here and said that nobody, when one of the entrepreneurs from India, the former Google head, asked if will it be possible if $1 million were given to an Indian startup and will they be able to build or replicate it? He said, don't even think about it. Such was the arrogance. They wanted the world to believe that nobody else would be able to do it, and they want regulations to be in place that nobody else would build it. But what DeepSeek has done is that it has, in a smarter way, with less compute, less volume of data sets, and they have been able to compute, they have been able to build a model which on benchmarks is at par with 4.0, ChatGPT 4.0, or in some of the cases a bit efficient also. Now there are studies around the world that are coming out, and there is a series of open source models that are going to be released sooner than later, which are going to basically change the entire notion of building AI. $6 billion, which we at FSMI and Svecha and the new institution that I'm heading, the Center of Excellence at IIT Viswam, we have been saying that we're going to tackle the 6 billion challenge. Now we want to see, can we build something like DeepSeek with $1 million? When DeepSeek could do it with $10 million, what does it take to build it? One is the compute, but the other important part is the data sets that need to be collected. Why are the data sets so important? Because we know that the language in which we communicate itself is a condensed form of expression. And the entire ChatGPT model was built on the text data sets that was available on the internet. So any written form or a script form of representation is a condensed form of expression, because a statement or a sentence, when it is spoken, has got a lot of cultural context to it. We have humor in it, we have pun in it, we have different forms of expression. Though we say that Anwar is smart, and I can still say that Anwar is smart, it basically ridiculing, or there could be some fun part of it, or actually it could be an assertive statement in itself. So the text in itself has got a very condensed form of expression. And now when we look at the language as a form of expression, if we can basically go and collect digital data sets, where we at Viswam or Svecha or the FSMI is basically trying to build is collect a lot of digital first data sets from the people, where we have got a cultural context that is also attributed to this, it becomes much easier for us to build an alternative LLMs which are completely deeply connected with our cultural context in the Indian conditions. And now, what DeepSeek has made is that making LLMs possible, if as a community, it gives us confidence that Malayalam LLM can soon be possible. We are going to release the Telugu LLM in the month of April, May. And we also believe that we don't need 10 to the power of 13 tokens, it means 10 trillion tokens, to build an LLM. We are experimenting with will 100 million tokens be sufficient to build as a large language model in the cultural context. And I think we have collected close to 50 million tokens through community participation. And we want to come out with a model as soon as possible. So what DeepSeek has done is basically created a confidence in the world that there is an alternative method of doing things, and we should be focused extremely on building, pursuing the alternative methodology. While the global north institutions have been propagating and speaking about high compute as an advantage, there is a smarter way of doing it where math solves the complexity and we might not be needing so much of a compute. And also, the compute problem, also we need to get away from the too much dependency on GPU. One more important project that we are working on, and I'm pretty sure that even in Kerala there's an initiative that is working on using the CPU or collaborative CPUs to build a cluster and train on it. At Svecha, we have been able to connect close to 40,000 machines and CPUs completely in remote locations connected over the internet, and we have been able to train models, and that basically there is a proof of concept available so that we can reduce the GPU compute also. And this DeepSeek bringing down the compute capacity gives us enough confidence that even there can be more kind of an experimentation that needs to happen on the utilizing CPU clusters or reducing the GPU compute power. This is an environmentally friendly version. We all have been seeing how much of it is true or not. There haven't been any concrete studies that were there, but the Californian fires could not be put off because all the water was being used to cool down the GPUs, is what the news reports say. But essentially, if it were to be true or not, less pressure on the environment, more ecologically friendly alternatives are also a possibility now with what DeepSeek has really done it. And I think now we need to, as the Thomas Wolfe, one of the researchers at Hugging Face was speaking out, he has come out with a detailed articulation on speaking about and saying that we need to go beyond this, the war race of who is going to be first in the AI, but we'll have to look at AI solutions coming out fast so that LLMs can be installed and deployed at local district headquarters or maybe at block headquarters for specific local context in which solutioning can be done. And I think that is going to be a reality in the coming couple of years. I would not say that it's going to take a decade for us to reach there, but maybe in the coming 2 to 3 years, we should be reaching such a situation. What is required here is, why has China been able to do it? There is a government support for some of the startup ecosystem and the research ecosystem. I think Indian government is also thinking on that. I think governments in India should be actually getting compute and make it more accessible for the research institutions, community participatory groups, and also some of the startup ecosystem for us to solve problems with the cultural context of data sets from India, local data sets, the compute and smart algorithms. I think this is the way to go forward. And once that we want to come out with the first complete transparent data sets also, we're going to make it and put it into the public domain. I think what DeepSeek has done paves the way for us to build an alternative, and we are one step behind in having the complete FOSS paradigm to be translated into the AI aspects. I think with this I conclude, and I would like to take some questions now or maybe after the next speaker speaks about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kiran. Before taking up questions, let me ask one question. As you have straight away mentioned, there are 4 components basically to assess a system, a visual system, whether it is open source or not. It's source code making open, documentation making public, the ways how it's been taken, and the most important one is the data set. And the limitation right now with DeepSeek in terms of becoming an open source is that the data set is not open. Do you think that a situation where the data set are becoming open in this AI world will be coming, or is it possible at this point of time?
Yes, Anwar, you have raised a very valid question that can the data sets be made public? Is a question we have asked. I think the second question is, should we make the data sets also public? Is the second question that is also internally implied in that. See, the first thing is that is there a possibility of making data sets public? Yes, there is a possibility for making all the data sets public in congruence with the data privacy and data protection, private data protection laws of the respective countries. They think it's a possibility. Can it be a reality? See, the thing is, all the data sets, that is the reason of what kind of data sets can be made public. The way in which we are trying to do things as FSMI is that we should be collecting data sets, digital first data sets and not synthetic data sets from the public. Why? The question is, our languages are generally considered or called as the resource poor languages, meaning that we don't have too much of an internet information available over the internet. But however, our languages being thousands of years old, we have a lot of literature in the form of fables, in the form of culture, the way we cook food, the way we cook things, the way an artifact is made. So we are asking people to go to the public and collect all this digital first data and release it. We want to put it in the public domain. And the question that you have asked implies that what does it mean? If we have done our own experiments, when we released the Chandamama Kathalu datathon and released the data sets on the Hugging Face, 2 days down the line, we figured out that all the AI owned by the big tech tools have learned it immediately, while the whole startup ecosystem did not even get a chance to look at the data sets. But so the thing is, we need to have and come out with a new licensing regime whereby the usage of data sets or what data sets they are using also need to be known to the public. So we are trying to come out with a new licensing mechanism to have the copyleft thing in the data sets part of it also. So to come out of the copyright paradigm and be able to do and release it, what OpenAI did is that it stole the entire internet, infringed into every copyright aspect of it, and learned it from everything, and it's been able to do it. How we are trying to do it is that create a data set that is digital first and have a new licensing system that protects the copyleft spirit of it. And I think this is the way forward in which we are trying to do it. And I think we are in software freedom law sector is helping us draft the license. And I think we're going to put it for public consultation and release it. Yeah, Anwar, I think hope I answered the question.
Very well answered. Any questions from audience? If somebody can come over here and ask. Okay, Kiran, then I will take you one more question, which is last one. You basically, interestingly, we have been seeing that already OpenAI has made distillation allegation against DeepSeek, that it copies its data or it violates the copyright. And here in India, even in US, the Washington Post, Guardian, I think, major dailies, they have filed suit against OpenAI that stealing their data or copying their data. In India, even the ANI has filed a petition against OpenAI by stealing the data. So, what is this copyleft? You have rightly pointed out in the reply, but how this complex situation of copyright violation and copyleft emphasizing can be tackled in this AI era? So this is the last question.
See, I think what the whole idea is, whenever a new paradigm or a new technology or a new break-even comes, the copyright came out in the era of the Industrial Revolution, right? To protect the author from the printing press industry. But rather it became an instrument and tool of the complete publication industry in itself. And that is when, in the era of the computer science, when you had this internet revolution, it was tweaked out as a copyleft, as a paradigm of fighting it back. So now the whole episode is that this copyright, as long as the copyrighted data is being used as a data set, it invites litigation undisputedly. So the path that we are pursuing, that is the reason why I'm saying the path that we are pursuing is that we are collecting the data sets digital first. For instance, in Kerala also the popular staple food is rasam, if I understand. Rasam is a popular staple food in Kerala also. But every household has got a unique way of making rasam. So the digital first data, we are going to the people, collecting how a food is prepared, how if a certain asking people to decide what the stories that their grandparents have been telling them, how do they cultivate paddy, or how do they do a particular task, and even for instance how even video information of how somebody gets onto a toddy tree and brings the toddy down. So all these information, the cultural context of skills, fables, historicity, or flora and fauna, we're asking people to have voice samples, ask them to speak about the cultural context there, and collecting the digital first data set is something that we have chosen as a way of dealing with this or getting away from this copyrighted thing. Because the person collecting the data is agreeing to collect the data with the license in which that we want to release the data sets. So we are avoiding that entire jargon of what you call this copyright, and that is how we are trying to do it. And the second most important is the southern part of India, be it Kerala, be it Tamil Nadu, be it Andhra and Telangana. We have had a history of social reforms and cultural participation. For instance, your literacy movement, or even before that, a lot of cultural reform movements existed. So we have a role of people's participation in building things. And I think that gives us a unique edge when compared to the countries of the global north to have data sets on our own. And that is what we're trying to exploit. And I would rather say that in Telangana and Andhra, what we have been able to do is that we've been successful in creating or fighting this barrier or breaking this barrier of copyright infringement issue. I think that's a path that I would believe that DAKF also should follow, because you have got a fast ecosystem, you have got kites where you've got students using. I remember I was on the panel of UN when I visited schools in Kochi. When I visited a school in Kochi, when you, I think kites was then called as at IT schools. When I visited the school, I figured out that students were given digital cameras. They went and took photographs of the flora and fauna around them. And they figured out that there were 6 endangered species of beetles that were there in the forest around. And there were 2 or 3 different kinds of beetles that were found which were not there in the classification of the zoological, what you call live beings. I think that is how the community contribution or community collaboration has been able to do with innovation. I think if you basically tap onto the entire resource networks that we have in Kerala, I think that's going to be something huge. And Kerala would be what we have achieved in a year and a half in Telangana and Andhra, with the ecosystem that you have built as DAKF and ITS schools, and your access to digital and literacy, everything in Kerala, you should be able to do it in a couple of months.
Preview.